Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Prime Sports NASCAR on Prime Sports Network. TJ Radun is here from rotowire.com to join me and to preview our second race of the season. Still in Daytona, this time a road course. And CJ, we can only hope that the road course race this week is just as exciting and fun as it was in what did they call that? The Clash?
The Bush
The Clash.
Clash.
I
Yeah.
always have to. They change it every year. The Bush Clash.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a night race. This is a day race, but as Eric pointed out, maybe because of you explain. You tell me why you think, as Eric said last week, that there may be a chance for the racing to be just as exciting.
So Eric's theory, I'm not
Not
sure I
yours.
completely I'm not sure I completely buy into it. His theory is that the downforce package and the high horsepower, basically the rules package that they were running with for the Busch Clash, is different than last year. So it made cars a little bit more squirrely. It made the tires fall off a little bit more and made you see that difference in grip levels. So if you remember throughout that race, you had a lot of people taking different lines, trying to go through corners, and it was a pretty tight battle between Blaney and Elliott at the end. One car was fast in one section, the other guy was fast in the other. So Eric's theory is that they're running that same package, except this time it's in the day. So assuming we don't have more rain, assuming we don't have more cloud cover, it's warm and sunny, the track will naturally get more greasy, those tires will wear even faster, and we could see an even more separation between those who are able to manage their tires and manage their settings and those who aren't. So theoretically, that would be exactly what we've been asking for years from NASCAR races, to put the winner, I guess, or the ability to go fast more in the driver's hands and take it out of the aerodynamics hands. So that's the theory. Last year, the race, as we all know, was not a great one. This is, from my opinion, this should be make or break for circuit. Yeah, it was not good at all. It was a snoozer. This is make or break, in my opinion, at this course this year. If they can't make it work under these conditions, I'm not sure how they can make it work at all. I just wonder how the length of the race and the length of the stages impact the racing, and how that, versus what we saw in the Clash, because that's obviously a significantly different distance. You've got a scheduled caution at lap 15, I think it was. Here, it's going to be all about the stage breaks.
Well, don't forget, CJ.
This NASCAR season might just be the greatest season of all time.
Like all time. And
I've heard that.
And so far, we are off to a bad start. As I was talking to Eric about this on Monday, everything that we despise about what can take place in the Daytona 500 happened. Everything. You had, first of all, the weather delay, which we have been they say they listen to the fans. Hello, we're here. We've been saying this for years. Please start the races earlier. If you start the races earlier, if you started this race earlier, you might have made it right there at the wire based on how long the race went, if they would have started at 12 noon or 12:05. And remember, this is the other thing, because I've done this before, and sometimes they do it and sometimes they don't. But I think it's so much better when they say, okay, are you the pre-race show is, say, 2 to 3, and then the race is supposed to start at 3. It would be nice if the race started at 3:05, because you've got an hour pre-race. So we don't need another 15, 20 minutes at 3 o'clock. So, yeah, they've done it. Like I said, sometimes they do it, but sometimes, and it seems like more often than not, they don't. Well, they'll start at 3:10, 3:15, 3:20. It's like, just start at 3:05. We've got that hour pre-race. If they were that interested in the whole pre-race stuff, they would have tuned in for the hour beforehand. So that's one of the things, and obviously it backfired again with the second. Well, this one wasn't delayed until Monday, at least, but it was way into the evening. And then we had what also we despise about the race at times, and that's the single file racing. So we had too much of single file racing, Then we had we should have known this was going to happen. Then the race ends on a caution flag, which is always great, especially when, as Eric did point out on Monday, just imagine how NASCAR could have made out if Chase Elliott would have been able to win that race. And nope, just got to press that button down real fast and signal a caution, because every second counts. Because until you press that caution button, the emergency people, they're not going anywhere. They're sitting right there where they're just waiting for come on, the caution people, once there's an accident, they're on the move anyway, or they should be on the move. They shouldn't be waiting for a caution. If they want to wait, then wait right at a certain position where especially if the cars are past them already and they know they're not coming around again, they could bust their butt out on the track. So I don't understand how quickly they have to do this. And we went over the whole safety stuff. This is not 10, 15 years ago. I don't see the rush. I think they should understand how great safety has been for the sport, give them the benefit of the doubt, but that's what happened there. And then, as much as we like Michael McDowell, to have someone that's 0 for 357 to win the greatest race of the year is just, it doesn't make any sense. And it was just a really bad weekend for NASCAR. Even though they'll say
this NASCAR season might just be the greatest season of all time, like ever.
Of all time, and maybe ever. I think that's the same thing. Anyway, it's your mic now, CJ.
Yeah, there are three things that I want to point out. Number one, for the pre-race, this year was particularly annoying that they dragged it out and didn't start it at 2:35. I think they said in all of their announcing that it was going to start at 2:30. They didn't even have the normal pre-race that they do. They introduce the drivers, they go up, they get confetti, they go down and do hand high fives with the fans and everything. That didn't happen because of COVID. So there was no reason to have that extra break after the pre-race.
Yeah.
That's one thing. We didn't need that. We didn't need to watch them ride around in their trucks from a mile away, a camera stop a mile away, for half an hour, however long it was for them to get the race going. Number two, on the finish with throwing the caution flag, I get why they do it, and it's consistent across the tracks. You're right, though, that they missed an opportunity this time, because it wasn't just Chase Elliott and Michael McDowell. Austin Dillon was there too. How many times do you get a 3-car nose to finish? It could have been epic and blown out of the water by that. And then the third thing, what was the third thing?
I mean, single file racing. Let's see. Again, someone who's never won a race before winning the Daytona 500. The weather.
It was like the weather, Derek Cope. I mean, it's like the Derek Cope win all over. But yeah, I guess maybe I'm going back to the commercial in the greatest season ever. Ryan Blaney picking up the dirt from Bristol, doing his terrible Robert Duvall impression from Apocalypse Now, one of the best movies of all time. It's like nails on a chalkboard.
Well, that's why I cut that piece to 5 seconds or 7 seconds. I wasn't going to let us play the entire thing. We don't need to go through that again.
It could be better. Yeah.
So it just, I mean, that's why I don't know. I don't understand. I think it's more, I just think it's optics again when we're dealing with cautions. Like I said, I don't see it. It just doesn't make any sense to me, because, okay, if there's a big crash, it's the beginning of the last lap, I'm a little bit more understanding. But when you are 3/4 of the way done, I don't. What are we doing here? I mean, I don't understand. Just because you put the caution light out, all that's going to do at that point. I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, the emergency people can still run out there. That's why I'm saying it. To me, it's optics, where they're not. I think they need to give it a little bit more, flexibility with the rule. And especially, like I said, with safety has been so good. It's not like something happened a couple of years ago where they didn't put the caution light out early enough. And wow, look what happened when we did that. No, nothing's happened like that before. So I don't understand why they do that. I just don't.
Yeah, the rule can stay as it is. Just you don't need to be trigger happy on the caution light button. The cars are moving very quickly. You can get a couple 100 yards further down, have a real race. I do think the caution light, dependent upon that rule in particular, depending on where, certainly at Bristol. Okay, Bristol is a great example, or Martinsville. Take any of the short tracks.
Yes.
Any crash on the last lap there, throw the caution immediately. Daytona and Talladega, 2.5, 2.66 miles long. To your point, you're less than a corner away from the finish. You've got over 1.5 miles for everybody else to slow down at that point. It's kind of risk versus reward. I say be a little bit more liberal and wait on the wait on pressing the button. Make it a little bit more interesting versus some kind of obscure buried transponder line somewhere in the track that nobody knows exactly where it is.
I mean, you could even say something like, well, and I don't care if they got to break this rule down 50 different ways, but they could even say, because look, the cautions can't be for the drivers that are already ahead of the accident. I mean, somebody would have to explain that to me. So that can't be that. And again, based on where the crash was. And then any drivers that are coming behind it, I mean, what do you think? They're going to drive fast? Of course they're going to slow down. I mean, they don't need the caution light to go on to tell them they got to slow down. So
those guys are just worried about making it to the finish, not racing.
Yes.
At that point. So that's a very good point. I would argue they probably are more concerned about the guys that are in front, like Michael McDowell. You won the race. You're excited. Your team's on the radio cheering. Do you see the caution flag? Maybe. I doubt it. It would have to be a really terrible confluence of circumstances for that to create some kind of bad situation. But when you're in turn 4, basically, by the time you hit the accident, plenty of time to calm down. You'd see the lights from the safety vehicles that are out there too. So probably worth revisiting the rule. The rule at least brings consistency across the tracks, but maybe it should be a little bit more consistent on the big tracks versus the small ones.
And the other thing too is that you had a situation where nobody really knew when the caution came out initially, because before they got the final readout, you could see that they were talking about the end there, and they were thinking, the way they were talking, that McDowell was coming back on Chase Elliott on the outside, and maybe that's, if he won, that's where he could get him. But when they showed this actual spot where they called it, it looked like they must have called it like a second after the accident. Like as soon as the accident happened, somebody pressed the button.
Yep. It had to have been, because that was, when I was looking at it, that was probably the only time that he was actually in front all the way until you got to the finish line. So I as well was wondering very much where exactly that line was. And it reminds me of the Indianapolis 500 a long time ago. Helio Castroneves won. The caution came out in for a crash. I think that was in turn 3 on the very last lap, 3 of 4 turns, another 2.5 mile track. Paul Tracy was in the process of passing him as the caution light came out. Helio Castroneves was determined or called that day to be the winner. And Penske went back for Paul Tracy, pulled all the camera, pulled all the telemetry, proved that Tracy, at the time the caution came out, has picture evidence of it, that Tracy is ahead of Castroneves by a couple feet, went to court to get the race overturned, and the court decided that it was a race day decision that can't be overturned. Not that they weren't right. They admitted they were right. They had all the evidence to prove that Paul Tracy won that race. But because of the fact that it was a race day call, they said it was unappealable, which I just, like, I don't credit Helio with that many wins. I give Paul Tracy 1 because
yeah, right.
Rule book, he won. It's somebody's mistake on pressing the button or deciding who won. And that kind of reminds me of what we saw on Sunday. I would hate to see that happen again. And now I remember what the third thing was. Michael McDowell was such a long shot that I don't know if you went out to NASCAR.com or went to the NASCAR shop or Fanatics or anything the day after. Usually they have the email like, so and so wins a championship,
Okay.
get your gear now. You go out and look at those sites all day on Monday. It said driver's signature, driver's name. Didn't even have Michael McDowell's picture, didn't have his autograph because he was such a long shot. They must not have had database, so it was some generic driver's name, insert driver's name here, Daytona 500 champion, get your gear. Yeah, it could have been so much better.
I'm surprised actually that none of us put a little bit on McDowell, because we did like a buck or two, because we've talked about this being one, and we went over the race last week, obviously, and went through the fact that McDowell has done pretty well and he's a long shot, etc. I was fortunate enough to put a buck on him after the whole delay, because I'm sitting there, we have 8 hours, and I was looking at the odds about an hour before the race restarted, and I was going, all right, well, I've already lost like more than half of my picks already. So what am I going to, and it's the beginning of the race. So I'm like, I've got to do something to give me some more picks here. So I was looking through and I was like, oh, McDowell is still 40-1. And he was in the top 10 at that point, right? I think on the restart. And I also put like a buck on, or a couple of bucks on Stenhouse, which we didn't before that. And then I added more money on a couple of drivers that I didn't have as much on, like Kyle and Elliott. But I was very fortunate to at least, again, it was down to 40 if you had to do it on the restart. If you did it before the race, I don't know if it was 100. I don't remember if it was 100 or not. But
I don't think it was.
100's pretty high. I don't think so.
60 or 80, if I'm remembering correctly. Probably. I did put. We all talk highly of Michael McDowell at super speedways, also road courses. But anyway, I did put him in my recommended lineup for DraftKings. So whoever listened to me on DraftKings, you're welcome.
Very nice. Well, good job. And that's why we have you on the show. So even though you didn't benefit from it financially yourself.
What are you
going to do? Exactly. You make your money putting the information out there. That's all that counts, right?
Exactly right.
All right. So, all right. Now I'm going to quickly put the crash back up now. And it's interesting because I was looking all over for anybody to say anything. Logano, Keselowski, any of the analysts on Race Hub. And it wasn't until a few hours ago where I saw something online that, because they apparently it was that 7-minute thing that they do for NASCAR where they listen to the sights and the sounds of every race and you can hear what they're saying. So it's basically more audio stuff they're picking up during the race. And apparently they picked up something where Keselowski said something about the guy wrecked me to win the race. He actually basically cursed and said, I got dumped. And so I'm saying, well, where did that come from 3 days later? He didn't say anything post-race. Logano never said anything. Because when I was looking at it, it did seem like that to me. I was like, did McDowell just wreck these guys? How come nobody's... Yes. And if not, then can I get some sort of an explanation? And the guys on Race Hub were trying to break, they're breaking it down and they were going a little this and the drafting and that. But nobody said anything. They didn't even put it up as a potential. Well, in case anybody thinks that Michael McDowell wrecked these guys or dumped these guys, that's not the case. They just didn't even talk about it. So it wasn't until I heard the words right after the fact, when you're in the heat of the moment by Keselowski, did somebody actually infer that Michael McDowell wrecked Keselowski and Logano for the win.
That's exactly what it looked like to me. I was surprised when because I watched it delayed. I went to sleep. I've got to get up for work in the morning. But after I watched it, then I went and looked at all the articles and read the interviews and so on, and everything said Penske teammates collide. And I'm like, yeah, they collided, but it's not like one of them turned into the other one, and it wasn't like they were, dueling with each other to outwit one or the other. The push came from behind, and that's the exact same reason that the lap or the crash on lap 15 happened, was those runs coming down the back straightaway. If they're so strong, if you've got a too big of a gap to the car in front of you and you've got somebody pushing you from behind, you have to make sure you hit that person perfectly square, because it's going to be a big hit. Both of those times, Almirola and then Keselowski, they were in the process of turning or in the process of moving somewhere on the track, and they just got hit so hard that they lost complete control. That's exactly what I saw. I was surprised, like you were, that certainly for the first few days after the wreck, that nobody was saying anything. But I did recall, I think it was last year after the All-Star race, wasn't it him and him being Michael McDowell and Bubba Wallace, that got into some kind of feud because of Michael McDowell wrecking Wallace, and then Wallace dropped his bumper at McDowell's hauler. So
Really?
It's not like
Okay.
this isn't the first time McDowell's been involved in something like this. So I wonder how much of a reputation, certainly from Keselowski, who thought that was his race to win, and he was very focused in on it this season. I wonder how much of a grudge those guys are going to carry against McDowell for the rest of the season. Not like he's going to be battling for the championship, but he's going to be on the track with him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, if that would have been another driver, I think it would have been a bigger controversy. Like if that would have been Kyle Busch or who knows, another driver, that even Bubba Wallace, a controversial driver. If somebody of controversy would have done that, that would have been the big story. They dumped him. It would have been right on that. And could Logano have to, if Joey Logano did not move down at the time, because the only thing I could think of is McDowell didn't realize Logano was going to move down, so he felt if he bumped Keselowski would then move forward, and Logano. Mm-hmm. So what would happen if Logano, would that bump still have been too intense for Joey to handle?
No. If there wasn't, I think the combination, the accordion effect of the three cars coming together was what caused it, and because they were turning, I think is why it ended up being a crash. I think otherwise, either one of them would have had the ability to and the space to be able to control their cars as a result of that. I think we saw that a number of times throughout the race, where those big runs came and somebody got hit and they got a little bit squirrely, even happening in the corners sometimes. But as long as they weren't coming up on and then getting pushed into the car ahead of them, it turned out fine. It was when they were getting pushed into the car ahead of them that it.
And by the way, in the first crash, what could you say about that? Was that definitely a Christopher Bell?
The 24's on his side.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, he was getting a push from behind too.
Yeah,
I don't know if we got
I think Kyle was pushing him, so Bell didn't really have anything to do. But I mean, if you're laying blame, Bell's the one that's directly behind the guy that got crashed. So yeah, Kyle can't see through Bell's car to know what's happening ahead of him. Bell should have been, more active with his spotters. Same thing with McDowell. Should have been more active with their spotters. Should have been more active with their signals to the drivers behind in their car, putting up their hands and saying yes or no, come hit me or whatever. Obviously, it's a little bit different for McDowell since it's the last lap of the race. But certainly on lap 15, Christopher Bell should be kind of trying to tell Kyle Busch, hey. Yeah.
It didn't need to go. I mean, initially you get bumped. That's one thing, but you could have eased it up.
Yep, exactly right.
Now let's take a look at the standings here, because this is, what? And this is something that we've talked about also for the last couple of years. Can you please get, and look, I'm not happy Michael McDowell won the race, a guy that shouldn't be winning this race. But if you're going to put him in there, and he's going to win the race, anybody that wins a race, I don't care if another guy's got 99% of the laps, the other guy wins the race with one lap. I'm giving the guy who won the race the most points. It's just the way I'm going to do it. I'm sorry. I just think the winner of the race deserves more points. And how Micah McDowell could be 5th in points and he won the race. If the season ended after one race, Micah McDowell, who won the race, wouldn't be the champion. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and how about the fact that Chase Elliott,
who was second,
yeah, he's even further down. So, yeah, it's I don't know if it's a product of we just need time for it to normalize, but it's the stage points and throwing them in there. Austin Dillon had a very consistent race, consistently fast throughout the entire thing. So he was the highest guy to finish on average in each of the 2 stages, and then the race finish as well. So that's why he ended up in front. And then you go and mess it up even further and take the formula that they use to figure out who's going to start where for the next race. And it turns out that Chase Elliott's the one that's on top in that one. So it's a little bit incongruent, certainly. It's odd. I think it'll normalize itself out over time when we don't have such a weird finish.
And it does real quickly, yeah. You always go back after like a few weeks and you look and you go, wow, boy, things sure change real fast after that first race. So yeah, it doesn't mean anything. Taking a look at the championship odds, the only thing that changed a little bit from last week was Chase Elliott is kind of just now a little bit ahead of everybody at 5-1 as the odds-on favorite. Still kind of surprised that Ryan Blaney is sitting there at 12-1. But that's okay because we all took advantage of that this week with our futures.
Yeah, this was like a do-over week for me because you had such a weird winner. You didn't see that much change in the overall odds. So take advantage of it while you can. Ryan Blaney's out there. I added Truex as a result of having the do-over, but I kept all the exact same futures I had last week plus Truex at the same amount, 100 each. So definitely some good values out there. Blaney, arguably one of the best at 12-1.
All right, now let's go through the race, the road course race, and we're going to wrap up a little bit later with the pre-race interview with Kyle Larson that I want to throw in there. But Chase Elliott is the favorite, as well he should be. Matter of fact, these odds they're already dropping. I mean, they're getting close to 2-1 because I think everybody's automatically, once the odds are out there, everybody's putting money on Chase Elliott. And that's exactly what we've all done this week. We all have, the three of us have 3 drivers that we have all agreed upon. Chase Elliott at 3-1, Denny Hamlin at 9-1, and Kyle Busch at 10-1. The only one that did not go with a driver that 2 of us went with, that was you, CJ. Me and Eric, we both went with Ryan Blaney. You decided to go instead with a combination of Martin Truex at 4-1 and AJ Allmendinger, who's getting an opportunity to race in this road course at 14-1.
Yep, I had Blaney in there, trying to do the math, just couldn't work. It had to drop one of them out, and unfortunately, Blaney was it. And it's not. I think he performed very strongly. I think he looked very good in the Clash, but that consistency across all of the road course races was what I ended up going for. Definitely wanted to make sure I had AJ Allmendinger in there because I think how odd would it be if we had 2 surprise winners in or not
McDowell and Allmendinger.
Yeah, it could happen. It really could happen with
not?
AJ Allmendinger. Exceptional. But yeah, unfortunately, if I had, however many more, 10, 20 more points or whatever dollars, Blaney would definitely be in my list.
Yeah, Elliott, this is one of those weeks. We always talk about it. Whenever there's a driver that's 3-1, 2-1, we don't ever like doing that. It's just not worth it. Crazy things happen in NASCAR. But every once in a while, it's worth it. And this is when it's worth it. I mean, Elliott has 11 Cup wins. 5 of them are in road course races. He's just amazing. And
he almost too.
What's that?
He almost won the Busch Clash.
Yeah, and he didn't even have. It looked like he was going to get. It looked like Blaney was in great shape there, and Elliott was able to come back and force the crash.
Yep.
In the Clash.
Exactly right.
Yes. So, and Elliott's the defending champ of the race. He led 34 of 65 laps here. last year. He won the Roval also last year. And at Watkins Glen, he also won, leading 80 of 90 laps in 2019. And I'm talking about 2019. He didn't have the Roval last year. So it was Roval, Watkins Glen in 2019, dominated Glen, as I mentioned, won Glen also in 2018. Truex, the reason he's also one of the favorites, he was third in this race last year. He won Sonoma in 2019 and 2018. The only thing I was a little bit concerned with Truex with those odds is just that I don't know. He was the dominant driver just a couple of years ago on the road course, and then Elliott takes over, and Truex is kind of taking a back seat to Chase Elliott over the last several road course races, which is the reason why I decided to stay away from him at 4-1.
Yeah, 4-1, he's definitely priced at a premium. Like you just said, once Elliott came onto the scene in terms of the road courses, it seems like Truex has turned into more of a top 5 kind of guy. But you're right, he was the guy to beat on the road courses before Elliott came in. But that said, he started third and finished third in this race last year. He looked good in the Clash to me as well. Led 10 laps. He's a little bit more settled with Joe Gibbs Racing now. Not like it was a huge transition from Furniture Row, but he's in good with his team. It's not like it's a new situation for him. And I think he's just one of those drivers that takes some time to get comfortable and build things up. And I think this should be a good weekend for him. So I was willing to pay the premium price for it. I don't think he's the favorite, nor probably should he be. He's going to be in the top 5 though. And if something crazy happens, he could easily win.
And we all had Hamlin. I mean, the odds are really beneficial for Hamlin, and really for all three, Hamlin, Blaney, and Kyle, which is why we just about almost went with all three of them. I mean, Hamlin was second in this race last year. He has been solid in road course races over the last couple of years. Really, I forget when it started. What is it? Was it 2017 that he won the race? Was it at Glen or at Sonoma? I forget which one it was. Was that the one that he stole that race late? I forget.
Wasn't it through the?
Or was that the one
stops?
that he was stolen from? I forget. But I remember there was a race not too long ago. I just don't remember when it was. Again, if Hamlin has a win on a road course, I just remember that he had a really good day somewhere a couple of years ago. Also was runner-up, as I mentioned, in this race last year. He had some good top 5s in 2019, and he just seems to be getting better on the road courses.
Yeah, he led 21 laps in the Clash. He finished third at Watkins Glen in 2019, and he won at Watkins Glen in 2016. He's got top 5, top 3s at both Sonoma and Watkins Glen. So he's definitely a road course driver to look out for anytime the series comes to one. And the reason I wanted him this time was not so much about finishing second last year, though it's great. He led 16 laps in that one too, but it was really the 21 laps that he led in the Clash. I think that's going to be most similar to what we see this weekend. And he looked very good there against very good competition. And I think he kind of got screwed a little bit in terms of the pit strategy, and probably learned something from that to be able to vault himself forward on Sunday.
All right. Blaney has a few top 10s, several top 5s, including a win at the Roval 2018. Kyle, he was really on top of his game. And we had that stretch for a couple of years where we were waiting to see if there was going to be another really good road course driver when the Stewarts and the Gordons and so forth were ending their careers. And Kyle kind of started to be that guy for a year or two. Hasn't been the same lately, but he's still a very solid road course driver. He has some top 5s over the last couple of years. Unfortunately, he wrecked in this race last year. And he's had some other disappointing finishes over the last few years as well. He's kind of been hit or miss on the road courses lately. So if he can hang around like he did in the Clash, then maybe things will go well for Kyle Busch. So that's the reason why we all went with Kyle Busch. AJ was 4th in the Xfinity race at Daytona and on this road course last year. And I believe one of his better race results in the Cup Series was a 7th in 2018 on the Roval.
Yeah, AJ Allmendinger definitely not one to count out when it comes to any kind of road course race, whether it's on a roval or a road course. I want to go back to Kyle Busch real quick. You had mentioned that he had fallen off and he was looking like the guy to beat. From 2015 on road courses until 2019, he only had one finish worse than 7th, and that was on the Charlotte Roval when he finished 32nd.
Yep.
So Kyle Busch was the heir apparent on the road courses. AJ Allmendinger, never count him out against anybody in any series when he's racing on a road course, especially in a stock car. He can take it to the best of them, and his teams know how to call strategies too. So I look for him to have a really good result, and certainly from a fantasy perspective, get some finish differential points based on where he's starting to.
Is he driving for someone?
What team did he come up with? Let me see here.
It's basically, I mean, and who knows if he's, I would guess he's probably going to race a few times this year.
Yep. So he drives for Colleague Racing in Xfinity. I couldn't remember if it was Colleague themselves that were stepping up to this race or if they had partnered with another team, but it is Colleague themselves that are stepping up to field him in the Cup Series this weekend.
So it's just a single team kind of deal so he's not like he's taking over and substituting for another driver. Okay. As far as long shots, now I was the only one that decided to go with some long shots. Not that I'll start with Kevin Harvick. He's kind of in that AJ category. You went with AJ at 14-1. I went with Harvick at 16-1. And I just felt that a driver like Kevin Harvick at 16-1, he's had some decent success actually the last couple. He was 17th in this race last year, but the 2 previous years in the 6 road course races, all of them were top 10s. He also had a runner-up in Sonoma and 3rd at the Roval. So he's been pretty solid as a road course driver, and you're getting 16-1. That's the reason I did that. But none of us went with William Byron, who was 8th here last year, Joey Logano, who was 9th, or Brad Keselowski, who was 13th, and Logano getting 20-1 and Keselowski getting 22-1.
Yeah, Keselowski has never really impressed me on the road courses, though, so that's not terribly surprising to me. I like Kevin Harvick a little bit more on the road courses. He's got the past wins. Byron actually is a really good choice because he's flown kind of under the radar because he's not had like a top 3, but he was 5th at Daytona, like you said, 6th on the Roval, 8th the year before. I'm sorry, 5th in the Clash, 6th at the Roval, and then 8th in this race a year ago. But before that, he was also 6th at Charlotte. So he's consistently turning in top 10s, and you can see him starting to scratch that top 5 category. So of that bunch, and with Hendrick Power certainly too, I think Byron would be a good shot. But if you're going between Kevin Harvick and Keselowski, I think Harvick just seems to have more of the pedigree. He's been able to adapt to these types of courses a little bit better to me than Keselowski has over time.
Kyle Larson, 22-1, did not race, of course, last year. It doesn't have a great resume on the road course races over the last couple of years. No top 5s. He does have 3 top 10s, but no top 5s over the llast couple of years. Alex Bowman at 25-1. That's where I started to throw a little bit of money as far as some longer shots. Bowman, 25-1 is a pretty good number. He was runner-up at the Roval in 2019, 4th at the Roval in 2018. And I also put couple of bucks on Di Benedetto at 50-1. He's had some pretty decent results over the last couple of years, including a 4th at Sonoma. He's 50-1. Eric Jones, and 11th at this race last year, 4th at Watkins Glen in 2019, 8th at Sonoma in 2019, 5th at Watkins Glen in 18, and 7th at Sonoma in 18. So he's been pretty good, Eric Jones, on the road course races. And I also decided to go with Chris Buescher at 66-1. He was 5th in this race last year. So what about any of the long shots?
I like a lot of them. I like everyone you mentioned, actually. Kyle Larson, when you're looking at long shots, I like Bowman too. I think the turning point between the Cup driver of old and the Cup driver that we have today has been the feeder series. Xfinity has been adding road courses over time. They've got a lot of road course races. So these guys come into the series having just being more familiar on road courses than a Kevin Harvick came into the series at. Kyle Larson's a little bit more on dirt. He races some road courses here and there, not terrible. But I think Bowman's a good shot. Definitely learning something from teammate William Byron. A lot of top tens. He's got the runner-up at Charlotte Roval, like you said, 7th and 8th in his last 2 road course races, including the Clash. And then Michael McDowell, he had a 10th on the Daytona last year. Buescher as well. I would put Buescher and McDowell as 2 guys that always tend to punch above their weight when we're at both super speedways and road courses. For whatever reason, they just get it. And I think that a lot of that has to do certainly with strategy and the fact that the road courses minimize the differences in equipment. But Michael McDowell might not be another bad person to throw out there too. A lot of momentum coming off last week with his first win, plus top 10 finish there last year.
Yeah, the only thing is I mean, I come on, he should be like 500 to 1 to win this race.
2 in a row.
Yeah. Mike McDowell winning 2 races to start. Come on, give us 500 to 1, will you, Vegas? Because it's not happening. So
agreed.
Yeah,
agreed.
Austin Dillon, by the way, is 150 to 1. He didn't race last year. That's Kaz Grala raced and finished a strong 7th. So, what does that do for Austin Dillon? Again, not knowing this course, 150 to 1. I was kind of surprised. That's a pretty big number for Dillon.
I think it's big for Dillon just based on the team that he has. I don't think he's nearly as good on the road courses as Kaz Grala is. Kaz Grala is he's effectively a road course ringer. So that was one really lucky substitution or I guess with the fantasy game that we had last year. That was one good thing that happened.
That's right. Yeah.
Instead of Austin Dillon, if there was any chance, Austin Dillon not being great and I don't feel so good, let's get Kaz Grala in. Of course, but he's just not as good as Kaz Grala. I think he's probably a top 15, certainly a top 20. Anything less than a top 20 would be a disaster for him. But if he's at his best, he could probably be in the top 15, Austin Dillon at this track.
All right, our picks are up on the websites, including at racereviewonline.net, so you can check them out. Also, of course, our futures, they're up there every week. And the latest on our fantasy results and standings. We have our teams up there already. So before I go, I have to play this clip. You said before, I forget which one it was, you referenced something about how it felt for you. Oh, it was the extended clip, the Ryan Blaney Bristol impersonation.
Yeah.
The whole chalkboard deal. That's kind of how I felt watching this interview with Kyle Larson. It was painful. I get why he had to do it. I completely get it. I know he had to do it, but I don't know. I mean, who handles Kyle Larson? I mean, somebody needs to do a better job as far as how to prep this guy with these interviews, because he just was. He looked like he was sick, and he didn't make a lot of sense either with his answers. And I think what happens is it goes to show you want to know why Kyle Larson said what he said. Well, that's what the interview kind of showed you. That's why he said what he said, because they don't know any better. They're all in these little bubbles. They don't live live. I mean, we heard what happened with Deshaun Jackson about the whole thing with the Holocaust, that Donovan McNabb, not even whoever it was, I think it was Jackson, not even knowing or understanding anything about I mean, it's just what are these kind of education these kids, these athletes get? But anyway, let's take a listen to. I know I have to listen to this again. But let's play this cut from Kyle Larson on Sunday's pre-race show.
So what about the people who are tired of talking about race? Emmanuel, the world is equal, I hear a lot. I'm sure you hear, yeah, but Kyle, slavery was so long ago.
You know, I think we just need to keep reminding them that, it's not equal. African Americans, they weren't given a fair shot. And like I've watched a lot of your videos, you can't just say, 70 years ago, whatever it is, that, all right, here you go, you're equal. They're so far behind. You can't ever really get caught up from that. So we all need to do a better job of treating each other fairly and respectfully.
Yeah, he's saying that they're so far behind, meaning blacks, that they're never going to catch up. Really, this is, and we understand where Acho's coming from because he's coming from that kind of culture that we're too much of today. But you know how many very intelligent, highly educated black men that I have listened to over the last 6 months or a year that would have the same exact feelings that I have regarding what they're hearing from Kyle Larson. It's sickening. And like I said, I understand why Kyle has to do it. I really do. But it just didn't look good.
It was awkward, without a doubt. It seemed to me, I totally get why he had to do it. He made a mistake. He paid for his mistake. He checked all the boxes that NASCAR needed him to check, that were laid out before him in order to return. He's done that, and he's back. Those are facts. That segment to me, I think, was to, a lot of stuff happens behind the scenes. So nobody, followed Kyle Larson to go to the classes that he went to or the community service or whatever it was that he had to do. So they had to make it public because it was a big story last year, not just in NASCAR, but, across the whole country. So what it seemed like to me was a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, but it seemed like he was going through the list of topics or things that he had to say.
Talking points,
and check the talking points. Thank you. He had to say and get through these 10, 12
and he wasn't
points.
Saying them the right way. He was just throwing them out there at weird times, and it was like, I don't even, what is he saying? It's just awkward.
Yes. Yeah. And you said best, his answers didn't make much sense. No. To me, it sounded not genuine. It wasn't like it was a hard interview either. He wasn't getting terribly pressed like we see some of the people really get pressed by interviewers these days as well. So just putting him up there, it was awkward. You're right. I think his people, whether that's NASCAR or his individual people, probably should have helped him prep a little bit better, and it probably would have come off a little bit more genuine to everybody who really has a concern, and that Larson needs to atone for. I feel like, unfortunately for him and probably for NASCAR, it was a little bit like he didn't come off as making as much sense as would have done benefit to everything that he went through to come back.
Yeah, I mean, you just feel like it's one of those situations where just tell them how you feel. Just don't, maybe he was too over prepared. Just tell us. Because that's why I'm saying, listening to him, it was so easy to pick up and understand why he said what he said, because he's not educated. Yeah, I get that. He didn't know any better. But now it's like he was being completely thrown all this stuff at him that he still didn't understand, but he had to say.
Yeah, exactly right. It felt more forced than genuine, and I don't think that serves anybody's purpose.
You also know, you could just tell he's not a bad guy. You could tell he's not racist. He doesn't know any better. And that's unfortunately what we're having to deal with at this stage in our society right now. And I don't think it is a Democratic or Republican take. I don't think that's the case. It shouldn't be. It's just a guy who just needed to be educated a little bit, not over-educated and not thrown to one side of a political belief, which is exactly what happened. But that's okay. I mean, NASCAR has a lot of they just got rid of the Confederate flags last year, so they have a lot of penance that they have to deal with. And so I'm not feeling sorry for NASCAR, that's for sure. I just feel sorry for Kyle Larson. So
I feel like this opportunity for everybody involved. Just make it more genuine, like you said. Speak the truth. Don't read off your corporate written talking points.
Yeah, why can't we get these guys? Why can't we get Kyle Larson and Bubba Wallace in a room, have a moderator, and just talk?
That would have been a very good idea, and I think it would have come across as more substantive than what we saw.
Especially have somebody that has a very educated, and you could have even two moderators in there just to make sure that nobody's taking sides, but you have two and they're both educated. And this way, if there's something that Kyle doesn't understand, then it would be a great 30-minute kind of educational tool that we could have used. But unfortunately, chances are Kyle Larson is not going to want to do anything like this again.
I mean, you said it best. He looked sick. I felt like he probably went and threw up after that interview because he was so.
Well, it's over with, hopefully, and we'll move on. It's a long season, and Wallace survived the wrecks. I know he got beat up a little bit there, but he's still in the top 10. So that was a good week for him, and we'll see whether or not he can have a good week again this week. Because after this week, it is Homestead.
Yes, we go to Homestead,
and then
for
that's
the
it for
Dixie,
Florida.
Central Florida.
No, it's it for Florida. Then we've got.
Oh, yes, that's it for Florida. I was going to say Miami is in the south of Florida. What are you talking? Yeah, Miami, last day of February, and then we head out west to Las Vegas.
Okay, sounds good. All right, CJ. So next week we'll wrap up the road course race and move on to Homestead, where we finally get a halfway decent. I'd hate to say that racetrack because it's not one of our favorites, but compared to a road course and a super speedway like Daytona, it gives us a little bit more of an understanding of what we're dealing with. But that's why we said of last week's results, it's just way too early. It'll be way too early after the road course race too. So it's going to be another month before we can kind of start feeling things out and finding out whether a Bubba Wallace is still hanging around in the top 10 or not for real.
Exactly right.
Fantasy.
March.
Tell us what you're working on as always for RotoWire.
We've got trucks, Xfinity, and Cup all at the Daytona Road Course this weekend. So we'll have DraftKings and Fantasy Duel previews up on rotowire.com before each of those races. And then after the road course race on Sunday, we will put up the NASCAR barometer all on rotowire.com.
And don't forget to check out Eric Smith and racereviewonline.net. He is going to have tons of information for you, not only on his website, but of course he has his picks over at covers.com as well for a price. Good going, Eric. And we'll talk to Eric. I'll talk to Eric on Monday, as I do every Monday, to wrap up the weekend in NASCAR and the Cup Series and anything else that's going on in NASCAR in general. That's every Monday with Eric Smith. And then Eric sometimes will join us on Wednesdays. This week, I'm not surprised that he took the week off with all of the traveling and the delays at Daytona. I'm sure his wife,
he's a tired guy,
pregnant, had a great time. So I was like, yeah, Eric, we've got this. Just you take the week off. Don't worry about it. So maybe we'll see Eric again next Wednesday if that's enough time for him to catch up or not. We'll see. And that will wrap it up. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the channel if you enjoy the videos. This way, you'll see a lot more of these videos. And we look forward to doing them all season long here on Prime Sports NASCAR. For CJ Raduno and Greg DePalma, we'll see you next time.